Good morning. Thank you for your interest in the DC Physical Activity for Youth grant, also known as the PAY grant. This session will provide an overview of the grant application process and an introduction to grant management in EGMS. My name is Katie Lanta, and I will be facilitating today's webinar. I work in the Division of Health and Wellness at the Office of the State Superintendent of Education, also known as OSSE, as the Physical Education and Physical Activity Specialist, and I oversee the DC PAY grant. My email address is catherine.lanta@dc.gov. Please feel free to email me with any questions you may have. As background information, the Healthy Schools Act of 2010 mandates that OSSE make grants available through a competitive process to public schools and public charter schools to increase the amount of physical activity in which their students engage. In line with the legislation, the purpose of the DC PAY grant is to increase the capacity of DC schools to provide physical activity to all students before, during, or after the school day. The timeline is outlined on the screen. As you can see, the grant announcement was made on March 25th. The request for applications was released on April 8th. The pre-application question period ends on May 20th. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask about the grant, I can answer them up until May 20th. If there are EGMS questions that come up after May 20th, the help desk can provide help to answer those questions. The deadline to submit applications is June 3rd, 2016 at 4 p.m. through EGMS. Awards will be made by July 8th, and the award period begins on August 1st and goes through July 31st of 2017. The total funding available for this award period is at least $200,000. Eligible schools and community-based organizations may apply for up to $10,000 per school. OSSE will award funds to no less than 20 applicants. This past year, OSSE awarded 36 grant applications. Funds may be used to support activities described in the grant program requirements and are included in your grant proposal. Funding may be used to cover the costs of personnel, student group transportation, materials, equipment, and training, and to support the promotion of school-based physical activity programs. Funding may not be used for travel expenses, including hotels, airline tickets, and per diem for staff. All snacks and foods purchased with Healthy Schools Act funds must meet the requirements of the USDA Smart Snacks in School guidelines, which can be found online and also in the RFA. If a meal is to be provided to students, it must consist of healthy foods, fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grain-rich products, lean sources of protein, non-fried foods, and no desserts such as candy, cakes, pies, or buns. Grantees should strive to purchase local and seasonal produce when available. OSSE will accept applications from DC K-12 public schools and public charter schools participating in the Healthy Schools Act. Schools must have completed their 2015-16 Healthy Schools Act school health profile required by Section 602 of the Healthy Schools Act to be eligible for the DC PAY grant. Schools may partner with a community-based organization to provide physical activity supported by the DC PAY grant. In this case, the grant funding may go to the community-based organization, who will be designated as the fiscal sponsors of the grant. The fiscal sponsor, or the CBO, must have 501c3 status in order to receive the grant funds directly from OSSE and provide the IRS determination letter as an attachment to the application in EGMS. In this case, the partner becomes fiscally responsible for the grant funds and is deemed the fiscal sponsor. It is recommended that DC public schools that are not working with CBOs designate their PTO as the fiscal sponsor, provided that the PTO has 501c3 status. Past award recipients are eligible. However, a school may only receive the DC PAY grant 3 times in a 5-year period, If you have any questions about school eligibility, please let me know and I will provide that to you. OSSE will accept one application for each school campus. However, a community-based organization may submit up to 4 applications with 4 different schools. A letter of commitment regarding the partnership is required from each partnering organization or school, and this can be attached in the supporting documentation section of EGMS. For DC public schools, applications must be submitted through DCPS's central office. Protocol requires that DCPS schools applying for grants released by OSSE through the Office of Federal Programs and Grants. For more information, please contact the grant administration team at DCPS directly at ofpg.grants@dc.gov, and you need to indicate your intent to apply as soon as possible. The deadline was April 22nd, but if you have not contacted them yet, I would recommend doing so as soon as possible. With regards to cost sharing, applicants must contribute cost sharing funds equal to or greater than 20% of the grant amount. A detailed line item breakdown of cost sharing contributions should be identified in the budget. Volunteer time may not be used to satisfy this requirement. Applicants applying for less than $5,000 are not required to contribute cost sharing funds. District schools are not permitted to claim indirect costs. Community-based organizations must submit the indirect cost notice of interest to determine the appropriate indirect cost rate. A request for this form can be made by emailing ossie.grantscompliance@dc.gov. Again, that's ossie.grantscompliance@dc.gov. All applications must be submitted through EGMS, which can be found at grants.ossie.dc.gov. The upcoming DC pay grant can be found under fiscal year 2017. Please be sure that you are looking under fiscal year 2017 for the grant. In addition to completing all sections of the DC pay grant, you will also be required to complete the central data portion of the application, which can also be found under fiscal year 2017. Additionally, please remember to upload the letter of commitment signed by the principal and a 501c3 determination letter if you are a CDO. Schools do not need to upload determination letters, 501c3 determination letter. The following grant required activities are outlined in the RFA and also in EGMS. Through this grant program, it is expected that grantees will facilitate student, staff, parent, guardian, and community input to create physical activity programs and meaningful physical activity experience for students. Grantees will meaningfully increase the average amount of physical activity for students at their school. And the required activities of the grant include identifying a physical activity coordinator, establishing or maintaining a school wellness team, holding 4 school wellness team meetings throughout the school year, holding 2 community building events throughout the school year, completing and submitting mid-year and end-of-year reports, and participating in at least 1 site visit. Applications will be screened initially by OSSE staff to determine whether all application and eligibility requirements have been met. Only applications that meet all eligibility and application requirements will be evaluated, scored, and rated by the review panel. OSSE will use external peer reviewers to review and score the application received for this RFA. An external peer reviewer is an expert in the field or matter. Scoring and recommendations of the review panel are advisory only. The final decision to fund the applicants rests solely with OSSE. After reviewing the recommendations of the review panel and any other information considered relevant, OSSE shall decide which applicants to fund, as well as the funding amount. All applications that meet that application criteria will be reviewed and scored by a panel using the following criteria. There are 4 categories: project vision and implementation plan, which is 20 points, Curriculum Integration Plan, which is 16 points. Student and Community Involvement Plan, also 16 points. And then the cost effectiveness of the budget, which is at 16 points as well. The maximum number of points for the 4 categories is 68. Schools that are considered focus or priority schools will receive an additional 5 points. A list of focus and priority schools can be found on the OSSE website at the following link. I can also email that to you directly, or you can Google that and it'll pop up. OSSE reviews all applications for grant funds in accordance with DC competitive funding regulations. OSSE will notify all applicants of the final award decision no later than August 1st. Each award applicant will receive a grant agreement notification, again, that will include the award amount, award agreement, terms and conditions of the award, and any supplemental information required. In accordance with Section 8021D of the Education Department General Administrative Regulations, EDGAR, OSSE has implemented a reimbursement process for all subgrantees. Grant award payments are reimbursable through EGMS. Program costs must be paid by the subgrantee to the payee prior to requesting the reimbursement. It is not sufficient for costs merely to be incurred. All awards will be reviewed annually for consideration of continued funding. Compliance with programmatic and fiscal implementation reporting will be considered. In order to receive local funds, subgrantees must establish eligibility by submitting an application to OSSE in accordance with the relevant program statutes and any additional rules established by OSSE. Once OSSE has fully approved the application and issued an official grant award notification, subgrantees may then receive payment for allowable expenditures for which obligation was made during the grant period through the reimbursement request process. To receive reimbursement for grant program expenditures, OSSE subgrantees must complete and submit the applicable reimbursement through EGMS with the supporting documentation. It is expected that grant recipients will complete the following tasks. The first one is to establish and identify a physical activity coordinator in a timely manner once the award notice has been received. This physical activity coordinator will attend at least 2 trainings at OSSE. The grantee will notify OSSE of any changes to grant programs or activities, and then the reports will be completed and submitted on time. Information about EGMS can be found on the slide. The phone number for the support desk is 202-719-6500. Again, the number for the EGMS support desk is 202-719-6500. The support desk provides support Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. And the email address is osse.callcenter@dc.gov. And you can contact the help desk with any technical issues that arise. There are a number of helpful resources on the EGMS website under the training link at the bottom of the homepage. I'd like to highlight the user manual and the resource page on DUNS numbers and SAM expiration dates, which will be helpful when completing and updating the central data portion of the application. And again, that's under fiscal year 2017. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar on the DC Pay Grants. As a reminder, the last day to ask questions about the grant is May 20th. Any questions about EGMS may be asked right up until the deadline. And my email address is, again, catherine.lanta@dc.gov. Are there any questions before we end the webinar? You can type it into your box. All right, it doesn't look like we have any questions at this point. If anything comes up later, please feel free to email me or call me. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you again and have a great day. Bye-bye.